Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a premier field engineer specializing in management technologies. Today's session will be part 3 of an ongoing series focusing on Configuration Manager Current Branch and the Microsoft Cloud Azure integration. Today's session specifically focuses on the Microsoft Store for Business. So here's a bit of the agenda. First, want to do the introduction. I guess that's what this is. Talk about what is the Microsoft Store for Business and why we care. And then specifically focusing on the Microsoft Store for Business in terms of requirements, working with it, how we integrate it with ConfigMgr, and then summarize a bit by putting it all together. So that's where we're headed. All right. So what is the Microsoft Store for Business? Well, specifically, it's a few things, right? One, it's a source for apps that you might want to use on Windows 10. Now, it could be apps that you use on Windows 10 desktop. It could be apps that you use on Windows 10 mobile or HoloLens or Xbox. It is a repository for all of these cross-device apps, but they are all running on Windows 10. So it has a public store. Being able to proactively select and publish apps from the public store to users. Helping avoid some user confusion when selecting the correct business app and such. Private store, same thing. Being able to proactively select and publish apps that are in the public store into your private store and being able to focus the choice of apps that your users might want to see, right? Helps, again, avoid user confusion whenever they're browsing the larger business store if you want to. With the private store, you can choose to only let the user have access to your company's private store, which is a subsection of the broader public store, right? You can assign user rights. With the Microsoft Store for Business, IT staff can curate what apps you want to publish and deploy to your users. You do have a couple of different deployment options in the Store for Business. So users can browse and directly obtain apps from the public and private store, or IT can actually send a link to the appropriate apps to the user through email or some other way, right? Management tools can integrate with the Store for Business. Things like ConfigMgr, talking about that today, and Intune can easily integrate and be able to deploy apps from your private store to users and devices, right? So the user experience, again, very easy, familiar store type approach with all the devices that we have today, the Apple Store, the Google Play Store. This is just another kind of familiar store style approach. User self-service, self-support, very streamlined here, right? Unified experience across all of your different devices. Another thing that's cool about this is custom apps. Your organization can build and publish custom apps into the store that users can then consume, right? So lots of different things going on. So why the Store for Business, right? So some kind of things we just talked about in terms of benefits, but let's just talk about some specifics, right? So scale. The Store for Business will scale to fit the size your business needs it to fit, right? You can use the Store for Business directly to manage and deploy applications, or you can use various management tools. So our focus today will be on using ConfigMgr, right? Just doing a little bit of precursor discussion. Bulk, the ability to acquire apps in bulk. So if you have a particular app that you want your users to use, then you can license it in bulk, make it available in your private store, and off you go, right? Being able to centralize your management into one place, your private store. Flexible distribution options through the Store for Business, assigning apps to individual employees. The employee does have to be in Azure AD to do that, but it's very possible. So management tool integration. When we integrate a management tool such as ConfigMgr, right? One of the things we can do is actually manage apps offline. Another way to say it, there's two types of apps you can deploy, or two ways you can possibly deploy apps in the Store for Business. One is a broader thing known as online deployment, where it's kind of a self-service and such, and then there's offline deployment, where you can acquire the app and deploy it yourself and manage it yourself. Talk about that more in just a minute. Yeah, again, line of business app, licensing, managing licenses for apps that you choose and so forth, right? Keeping your apps up to date. So one cool thing with the Store for Business, if you're in online mode, is you can automatically keep your apps up to date that have appropriate licensing to do so. So if an app updates in the store, you'll get it, right? We've all seen that happen on various devices and so on. You can find a partner if you want to work with you to develop apps and put them in your store. Lots of things, right? So this is designed, the Store for Business is designed for organizations, designed for IT, really gives IT decision makers and administrators in the business a very flexible way to find, acquire, manage, and distribute both free and paid apps to devices at volume. Universal apps are what we see in the store. Universal apps are really interesting because they're a really seamless install. We've all worked with apps that we can install, but whenever it comes time to remove them, sometimes there's fragments left behind, right? That's not true for universal apps. It's very clean removal, no trace elements at all, and these universal apps provide consistency across the Windows 10 platform. In terms of security, you can assign user rights, you can publish contents to users, you can publish by policy or MDM to the user, Azure Active Directory integration, so all of that is there in terms of security. Back to the online and offline option for a minute. So an online option, just to specify, uses the Store for Business as a source for deploying or receiving updates to the app, right? An offline deployment is not going to use the Store for Business directly, right? The Store for Business will be the source, meaning that's where we're going to go get the files and the content that we need to be able to deploy the apps. But once we have that, we can deploy it ourselves in familiar ways like we've done with ConfigMgr as an example for years. But we control it, right? The one caveat, not all apps are available as offline apps. Many of them are. You'll notice that the Microsoft apps are, right? So it really depends on the way that the vendor of the app supports it in the store. But certainly that's an option if that's of interest in many, many cases. Okay. So now, offline apps. Why would you even do that, right? Well, there's a few answers. One is that your users might not have access to the store for business, right, for whatever reason. Imaging. Offline apps could be added to your images via using something like DISM, right? You might have no employees in Azure AD, but you still want to use the apps from the store. That's possible, right? Again, distribution options. How do you distribute these offline apps? Well, just mentioned, you could use DISM. You can use a provisioning package. You could use MDM, Intune, ConfigMgr, right? If you wanted to do that kind of thing. And then basically all you need to do for offline apps is download them. So you're going to need the metadata, the package, and any frameworks. I'll explain this to you as we go through, but just laying the groundwork here. Another couple of things, and then we'll get into the fun stuff, right? So EXE to Universal Windows Platform Converter. So this is one of those things that's out there and you can use. So what this does is it will convert existing apps into the Store for Business unified format. Really useful to help streamline deployment. Gives you greater reach, a lot of opportunities across devices, so that's out there. If you're interested in that, another thing that I just throw in here, because it's an app available in the Store for Business, really, is the MSIX format. So we've deployed apps in the MSI format for years and years, right? Really new to the scene, but the new preferred format is this thing called MSIX. And so won't really talk about it more here, but just will say that is an app in the store. And if you want to convert your app's format from MSI to MSIX and start using that, which you should, then take a look at that. It's available in the Store for Business. Okay, so that said, what are some of the requirements for using the Store for Business? Well, they're not many, right? Some things that you would expect. You need to have an administrator account. The level of the person really managing everything in the Store for Business should be global admin in Azure Active Directory. This is used to access this account, the Store for Business, right? Used to administer the Store for Business in terms of the private store, the public store, assigning apps to users, and so on, right? You need a user account. So this needs to be the account used to access the store. It's required to have the user account, even if using management tools for online apps. Let me specify that for a minute. So you need the user account, but for accessing the store for business, but only if you're deploying online apps. If you're deploying offline apps, you don't really need the user account, right? Because you're not going to the user store or the business store directly. And so on, right? Those are the requirements that we're talking about. Okay. All right, so as we get into the fun stuff here in terms of demos, which we'll be doing most of the rest of the time, a couple of things I want to do here. So first of all, I want to walk you through the store for business, just itself, right? Then we want to talk about the user experience when using the store for business. This diagram that I have here is really intended to show just a store for business kind of scenario. So in Azure, we will have the store for business. We will have Azure Active Directory. And we have a couple of systems out here that are receiving and using apps in an online mode from the store for business. We have our IT Pro out here that's going to configure and manage the store for business, right? These devices consume from the store for business, and because it's in online mode, those users do need to be in Azure Active Directory, right? So that said, let's go ahead and pull in the store for business and just look at a few things. Okay, again, so here's the store for business. I'm logged in with my Tailspin Toys presence, right? And so we're just going to kind of walk through a few things. Here's the home page as it will come up, and you will see different apps, right? These are all the different apps that are available in the store for business, the categorization of these apps. So if you want to go into a certain type of tool, then you can go do that through here. So I'm just going to go to utilities and tools, maybe, right? And so it'll pull up in the store all of the different apps that I might want to use. So here's sticky notes, is one. You can just scroll on down through, whatever you want, feedback hub, whatever. Here's that one. Maybe we'll focus on this one just for a minute. So now, if I click on an app, once I decide what app I want, I can click on it, and that's going to take me to another page where I can decide, do I want to get that app as an online version or an offline version? Now, this is a Microsoft delivered app, so I know it is available in online and offline. Not all of the apps are, right? So what I might want to do is say, okay, I'm going to get for this demo, I'm just going to get the online version of the app. So I'm going to say, get the app, right? So what it's going to do there is add it to my private store, my inventory, right? So I can go ahead and provision it and do other things from there. Right, now I can also, so now that I own it, I could do things like install it from here. I can go ahead and click the ellipse and manage the thing from here, right? For more actions to take me to management. One of the other things while I'm here is I want to show you the offline option. So if I click offline, right, and get the app, it's going to take me into, this section already here. Let me go ahead and close that. And let me go back to offline or online. You go to the ellipse. I can. I'm going to click manage. All right. So it's going to take me to this particular app, right? So here's how I can assign the app to users. I can then go ahead and make it available and look at it in my private store. So I'm not going to assign it to any users here, but I could just click assign to users, tell it what people to assign it to, and off we go, right? But I'm going to go ahead and say private store availability, right? Who I want to be able to use it and so forth, and whether I want to install it, and all of those kind of options are available. So let me go back for just a moment. All right, let me see if this is updated yet. Offline, manage, that's what I was waiting for, is for this option to show up, right? So now that I can manage this thing offline, and what offline means is that I'm going to need to acquire the binaries so that I can deploy them to my users, because the expectation is that they're not going to be able to get, for whatever reason, to the store for business. So here I can decide, okay, what do I want to do? I can download the package for offline use. This is going to give me the ability to define what particular architecture I want, what my minimum version is, Here I'm going to say maybe x64, that's fine. Download the package for offline use. I can download it here, right? And so what I would get is just a download prompt to save it. Save that onto the desktop, and I'll show you what it looks like. So I'll put that just over here in, just put it in downloads. Great. And so hit save. All right, so that's going to go ahead and download, not huge thing. Being able to get licenses, how I want to do that, generate licenses, the various required frameworks. So it's not just the app, right? It also are the required frameworks. So you need to also acquire the frameworks that are here. So it shows you all the required frameworks that are required. And you can download those as well. So I'll just go ahead and download these. And we'll actually keep this for a minute because we'll use this again in a minute, I believe. Put that here. And then one more. And we'll put it in the same place. Okay, good enough. So now I've effectively downloaded this for offline use. Now let me pull that up for a minute and just show you what it looks like. And again, we'll look at that in just a minute. So I have these four files. These are all Apex files, Apex bundles, whatever. I can then use that to deploy these apps myself using whatever method that I want, right? So we'll come back to that in just a minute. Okay, so again, that's offline, that's online. Now, if I'm on my manage page, which I am right here, right? I got to this page, just a reminder. So I was over here in the store and I was browsing, right? Let me cancel this. And I was just browsing for apps, right? And I was browsing for, get rid of that. I was browsing for my app, but then I went to either here to go to manage, or I went to here to go to manage, right? And what that did is it took me over here. So let me just go to the manage node directly, since I've gotten my app here already. And so now that I'm in the manage node and I'm going there directly instead of going there through the app, I have a number of different options that are available to me on this page. So along the left-hand side, let's just talk about a few of these first. So on the home page, here's where I have a bunch of tiles that are out there. I have just tiles that will tell me about my subscription, my trials, when they're expiring, so on, license availability, if I've purchased any licenses, what my recent purchases were. Something didn't go well there, but that's okay. If I need help and support, how I can get it. The different apps that I own, any subscriptions that I have, any benefits, billing and payment, devices, which is, by the way, where you access autopilot if you're doing that through the store. Permissions, you can change your users' permissions here, go into settings, and so on, right? So a lot of valuable things that are available here. But as I go on down the left-hand side, we have other things such as quotes, in case I have any quotes for the store. I have products and services. So under products and services, I have things like apps and software that I own. So these are all of the apps and software that I have in my private store. And you will see how I've licensed for these. So I have licensed myself for online and offline, online and offline. This one is just available online. So is this, right? But you see all the different options that are in here. And I can go to each one of the apps, in the store and look at the details. So if I want to look at GoToMeeting, for example, I'll just click on it. It'll show it to me. And just, this is the view we saw a little bit ago, right? And such. So other things we can do. Again, I can view licensing detail, assign to individuals, and so forth, right? And then, I have the benefits, option if I had anything there. Any new LOB applications, which I don't, have any there. So looking at my organization page. So here I can see the profile, right, of my organization, the key contact. This is my information, any agreements, that are in place, any tenants that are connected from other sources to this one, any admin approvals, that are there. I can look at my devices, right? Now, this is a page that is used to manage the autopilot configuration. So I'm not going to go into any detail, really here. But this is another place. So looking at billing and payment. So looking at invoices and payment methods and so on that are out here. And so you'll get invoices even for apps that don't cost anything. You'll get those invoices and so forth. You can look at your payment methods that you might have set up if you have any that are there for buying apps and so forth. You can manage your order history, products and services again, any volume licensing that you've done, partners who you might want to connect with to help develop apps and manage things. Again, permissions here. These are users that are in Azure Active Directory, and you can assign what permissions they might have and so forth, and other blocked people, line of business purchasers, a lot of different things in here. Go into settings, and here, this is a key area to configure when you're dealing with config managers. We'll come back here, right? So one of the things, so here we just have shopping behavior, what we want to allow in terms of shopping experience and so on. We have notifications. I'll show you, get invoices, how you do that, devices, and so forth, device guard policies and different things. And then we have distribute. So distribute is how you actually get your apps from the private store and distribute them out. So here we have this, right? Change the private store name if you want. And then we have management tools. So we'll come back here when we set up Config Manager integration in a bit. But specifically, we have Intune by default that's configured here, right? And I can activate it. I'm not going to. But in order to allow Config Manager to have visibility into and manage the store for business, we have to add it as an approved management tool. That's done right here. I'll show you how to do that again in a minute. In fact, we'll leave, we'll come back to here in just a minute. And then finally, if you want support, need support, you can come into this page and see the different options for support. So I'll come back to settings and just kind of leave that here for now, and we'll be back to it. So let me pull this out of the picture for a moment. Okay, so that's the walkthrough. Now, what about the user experience, right? Whenever you have a user on their PC wanting to access the store for business, there's a couple of different controls, that we have. Let me pull in my test PC, and I'll just use my corporate PC for this one. So I went ahead and launched my store for business on my corporate PC, and let me just pull that in. So here's the store for business app on my corporate PC, just like you might get on your corporate PC. Now, there's two sections to the store for business. There's the public store, right, which is what you see here, and then there's the private store, things that my organization might want to make available to me to deal with certain line of business requirements or whatever the case may be. So this is my corporate PC. So you see that I have a section called Microsoft here. And so this is the Microsoft, since I'm a Microsoft employee, our specific private store inside the broader Microsoft Store for Business, or Microsoft Store, right? The public store, right? So if Microsoft wants to publish different things to me directly, they can put it into the Microsoft Store. So let me show you, right? So I'll just go to the store. You'll see the different things that are available to me that I can, as an employee at Microsoft, go ahead and download and so forth. So the question comes in, do you want to allow your users access to the public store and private store? Do you want to only allow them access to the private store, right? Some organizations want to only give their users access to the apps that they have curated and provided in the private store. So how do you do that, right? So a couple of ways. Let me go ahead and pull this out of the, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and close it. So a couple of ways you could do that, right? One is using MDM to set a policy to say, only access the private store. So this is a config manager focused thing. Let me show you how to do this. So I'm going to pull back in my environment and quickly head over to Intune if I can maximize that. Here is my Azure portal, and over here is Intune. Right? So let me pop into that real quick. And this is an MDM option. I'm using Intune to configure it. So if I go over here to device compliance, And then I create a new profile. I'm just going to choose my platform and choose that I want device restrictions. Oops, I think I chose the wrong thing. I did. That makes sense. Device configuration. That's why it didn't look like I wanted. So let me go back over here. Profiles. Create profile. And then let's look over here to Windows 10 and later. Then specifically, I want to configure a device restriction profile. And right at the top here, you'll see App Store, right? And so there's a number of different things you can set for the App Store and so forth. This one is the one specifically that we're talking about in terms of restricting a user's rights to just the private store. So if you want to block the public store, just allow only the use of the private store. And there's several other options in here, as well, if you want to set those up. Again, this is showing how to set this with Intune. This is an MDM thing. And so because it's an MDM thing, you could also access this through setting a configuration service provider if you needed to. If you don't know what that is for this session, don't worry about it. This is not an Intune focused session. But the CSP specifically is under application management and then require private store only. Okay, so that's one way. Let me pull this back out of the equation. Another way is you could actually just do it with local policy, right? So let me show you setting local policy. So for that, I will pull in my Windows 10 PC and open up the policy section, if it will respond to me. All right, so MMC. Yeah, let's do that. Let me open up local policy. All right, good enough. File, add, remove, snap in. And wait for it to respond to me. There we go. Group policy object editor, add, finish. Cool. All right, so if I look at local computer policy and go down to user configuration, or it could be computer configuration too. I'll stay here. Administrative templates, Windows components. Must need to reboot this PC. Let's see, Windows components. And then store, right? So if I go down to store, right here, I'll have options where I can set access and different things as we come up here, right? So it's spinning for just a minute. There it comes, right? Turn off the store application, turn off only display private store. And I could do the same, up here under computer configuration. So administrative templates, and then Windows components, and then store. Depending on how you want to target it, either one should be fine. Store, right? So the same options will show up under here. So you can choose these, a couple more under here, right? And use policy or MDM to control how things work in terms of the user experience in accessing the store really, really nicely. So completely up to you. Just show that to you because you might have a need to do that. And so on. Again, talking about the Windows Store, haven't gotten into the Config Manager integration yet, but we are just about to do so. All right, so let's do it. So in terms of now taking all of that we just learned about what the Windows Store is, how it works, what kind of things are in there, and so forth, once we understand that, once we have our hands around it, can configure some things, there will become a need to deploy applications in the Windows Store to your environment. So how do you do that? Well, you can do that with the Windows Store itself, but it's not as seamless as using something like Config Manager to do it, or Intune, but we're talking about Config Manager here. So I want to walk you through, first of all, how to deal with universal apps manually, because these universal apps that are in the Windows Store, they're not things that we have not encountered before. They're things that Config Manager itself can deliver, even if you don't have integration with the Windows Store. But if you then do have integration with the Windows Store, it's made a whole lot easier, and I'll show you that and want to walk you through it. Now, before we get to it, the flow now is a little bit different, right? Here we have the same IT pro that's managing the store for business, right, directly. And then we have ConfigMgr here, where we're going to set up the Windows Store for Business or Microsoft Store for Business connector. That'll be in the second demo, right? And then it will synchronize the detail out of the Store for Business, and then you can manage everything from ConfigMgr. Any Windows any Windows 10 clients that are running in offline mode or want to deploy offline apps can then get those from ConfigMgr. If you have online apps you want to deploy, then you can do that through ConfigMgr, and they'll go get it through the Windows Store, right? So a little bit of modification. Okay. So that said, let's go actually look at setting the stuff up in ConfigMgr without having any connector to the Store for Business. Now, this first demo, let me pull in my environment. This first demo, I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing the demo of things without the connector, because frankly, the connector is the reason that we're kind of here. But let me show you this option. So if I go to Software Library, go to Application Management, right? Applications, right-click, Create Application. So specifically, there are a couple of types of apps that I can choose. First of all, this one will be offline. This one is online, right, in the Windows Store, right? So now I just have to say what location in the Windows Store. What we're going to do is open up a browser, and then I can browse the Windows Store, right, very similar to what I did earlier. And then I can choose whatever app I want. I'll just choose that one. That's fine. Right, and it's going to bring it in. I'll hit OK. What's going to happen is that I'm going to get a link to that app specifically in the store. And then when ConfigMgr deploys this, it's just going to deploy a link to this specific location in the Windows Store, and then the PC will know to go to the web and get it from this location, and to the Windows Store and get it from this location, which obviously means that this device needs to have access to be able to go get these things, right? Now, the other option is to use this offline installer, or the AppX installer right here, and then I can specify the location to the source files and build an app very similar to how I would build any app. Now, the difference is, remember, I actually downloaded, going back to the download location, this is on my corporate PC, so it's not even on the site server, so I'm not going to go any further with it. But I downloaded these different things and their AppX files and AppX bundles, right? And I'm going to delete them from here because I don't really care to go forward with them. Just wanted to show it to you. And those are the things that I would put in a source directory and bundle up in here and deploy, right? We could do that. We've been able to do that for a long time, right? But now let me move away from that, because the more easy way to do things and the better way to do things is to simply do integration between ConfigMgr and the Store for Business. So how do we do that? Well, we're in the ConfigMgr console, so let's use that and just build out our integration. So back to administration. And so I'm under Cloud Services, and I'm to Azure Services, and I've got my two little pieces here in terms of cloud management, right? So Store for Business integration is accessed really easy by just right-clicking on Store for Business, configure Azure Services, and then specifically, here's Microsoft Store for Business. So I will type in Microsoft Store for Business, Tailspin Toys, which is my area, right? And continue forward in the wizard. And then right here, I'm going to choose either Azure Public Cloud or Government. In this case, it's only Public Cloud that's supported, which is fine. And then notice this one, add an application that represents a web application or web API or both. And it allows me to choose. Now, this particular node, since I do have the web application configured already here, it will choose the web application for me, and I could proceed with this, right? So it just chose this particular web application for me. I could just move forward with this, no problem at this stage. But going with the idea that I want to have a separate web application for every separate unique function that I'm doing in Azure, you can choose to do that or not, right? But for here, I'm going to browse and use this wizard to import a web application. Well, you might look at this and say, why don't you just use this wizard to create the web application? And I could pop this up and type in all the detail, and I would sign in, and what would happen is it would tell me, hey, you've already got some web applications created here, use one of those. So if I want to create another web application to actually use the kind of approach that I'm talking about, where you have a unique web application for every single function, what I instead need to do is import that web application. Well, that's great. In order to import the web application, I actually need to create the web application. So what I'm going to do is pull back in my Azure environment and show that to you, how I actually would create the web applications. Let me pull back in Azure, and then we will import all of that detail. So moving back into my dashboard, we'll go back down to Azure Active Directory. Here we are. So I'm going to create this web application, right? And to do that, I'm going to go to Enterprise Applications and New Application. Okay. All right. So, oops, not that one. App registration is what I want. App registrations, there. That's what I want. So, new application registration, and I'm just going to call this ConfigMgr -SteveRack -MSFT, Microsoft FB integration, or connector. We call it connector. Right now, this name is just unique so that I know what this is in my Azure portal. And by the way, you do have to go and click on this. Even though you don't change it, you have to click on it, otherwise you won't get past it. And then the URL is going to just be that name. This does not have to be a resolvable name at all. It just has to be something that I can use to latch onto with ConfigMgr. So I'm going to create that. Okay, so when I create that, it's going to give me a unique application ID, right? So I'm going to create a notepad doc real quick, or I could just do this on two screens if I had it. I'm going to have my notepad doc off to the left. I'm going to copy this application ID, because this application ID is actually also referred to as the client ID in the console, and I will need this in a minute to go through and import the wizard. Another thing I'll need is my actual URL, so I'm going to copy that, and I will use that again in the console in just a minute. And then one other thing I need to do is create what's called a key, so that I have secure access to my environment. So I'll just call this key, call it whatever you want, right? I'm going to give it a duration of never expires, and I'm going to save it. Now, when I save it is the only time I will ever see this key. So you need to copy it off now, and I'm going to put that over under key in my notepad doc, right? And then I am good to go. Once I navigate away from this page, I will not see this key again. So let me show you. If I go to required permissions and just simply go back, I have the key, but the value is completely hidden. So I needed to have gotten it then, else I would have to create again. Now, the other couple of things that I'm going to need to complete the wizard under Azure Active Directory will be my tenant information. So let me go to Properties. And the name of my tenant is Tailspin Toys, right? And then also, I will need to get my unique tenant ID, which is my directory ID down here. All right, so I'm going to copy that off and paste it over to my notepad doc. So here I've collected all the information that I need. It's on another screen for me right now, and I'm good. So I've created all this. Let me go back to ConfigMgr, right? And I will now import that information. So I'm going to click Import. And so the Active Directory tenant name will be Tailspin Toys. And the Active Directory tenant ID will be what I just pulled off, right? The application name is what I configured, ConfigMgr -SteveRack -MS Microsoft Store for Business, connector. My client ID information I stored off. Go get that here. The secret key that I have. Go grab that. And then it's going to ask me, even though I said no expiration date, it's going to ask me for one. I'm just going to go way into the future because I'm pretty sure that I will tear this down and do something else by the time I get to 2021, just a guess, right? And then finally, what is the application URL, right? And so that's also something I put off in the Notepad doc. And let me put that in. And then hopefully if all is well, I click verify and we go back through. We successfully verified it. It's okay now. And now I have this as a choice to choose from, right? This one right here. So I'm going to choose that and select OK. And you notice it changed my connector. So that way I can continue forward using my desired approach of a single web app for each function here. Now you don't have to do it that way. You could have used the one that was already there by default, whatever, right? So I'm going to go forward and configure my next configuration. So the next thing I have to do is actually specify what folder I want to use to store the content that comes down from the Store for Business, right? So I actually already have a space created, I believe. Let me go into it and verify it's there. So Microsoft Store for Business or Store for Business, where did I put it? Windows, let me see. Yeah, right there, Store for Business Apps. And I did just get rid of this before I started, so I'm going to empty this whole thing out. Good enough, that way it gets rid of all the stuff I had in there. And I will just use Store for Business Apps in the path, so I'm going to put that in here. $, KG source, Store for Business. Okay, should be good. Let me just make sure that resolves so I don't make any typos. It does. Okay, good enough. And then I can choose whatever I want in terms of languages and different things. Click Next. Right, summary. And then I am connected, in theory, with the Store for Business. Now, how do I validate that? Right? How do I validate that I'm actually connected with the Store for Business? Well, I can go in and I can initiate. My synchronization. So on down here, I have my Store for Business. I can actually come up here if I want to and manually trigger a sync, which is a good thing to do if in fact you are needing, that's 119, right? So that's before I actually tore it out the first time. So let me sync it, right? And so it's going to go and it's going to try to sync. Looks like it's failed for now. Let's see what actually happened. One of the logs you can actually use to test what's going on with your Store for Business synchronization is the Windows Store for Business sync log. Let me just go into the logs here and all the way to the bottom and look and see what's actually going on. The sync worker might just be too new. Let's see. Authorization error. Okay, so let me go ahead and deal with that and I will come back. Oh, wait. One key part of this and I forgot to show you, and I've forgotten about it myself. So we've got the connection set, right? But what we haven't done is we haven't given ConfigMgr rights into the Store for Business. So that's the last piece we need to do. Apologies for that. I was jumping ahead of myself. Here we go. Store for Business. So back to the settings part. Under Distribute, under Management Tools, I'm going to have to add in ConfigMgr, and it's going to browse to it right here. I forgot to connect in the web app that I just created, so I connected that in, and now I'm going to activate permissions. So now permissions are activated. Now I should be able to see all. I'm going to go ahead and close out all of this because I have great confidence now. Now I should be able to see the synchronization happen without a problem. So let me try that one more time. Sync. Okay. So Might take just a minute for it to actually roll, but it should go through. Let's see what it's saying now. It's still saying a little bit of exception, but it should get there very quickly. So I'll come back to that in a minute. Actually, I'll fast forward a little bit because I have actually synchronized this in the past. So I'll show you what it looks like. So if I go down to license information for store apps now, you'll see one app here. There were several more, and it should be that I will get these populated again without much delay. So we'll see that. But I do have the one in here. So now that I have an app synchronized, it's really easy to create the application. So remember what we did in terms of creating the application. Before, I had to go into the applications node, create a new either online app or offline app and do it the normal way. Here, I can just create an application really easily, answer just a couple of questions, right? And, well, okay, so this must still be just a stub, but easy enough. And I'll come back to this in just a second whenever it synchronizes. So while I'm waiting for the next sync attempt, just wanted to call out this entry in the log about not being able to synchronize more frequently than every 10 minutes, right? So I'm stuck kind of waiting for the 10 minutes to roll through and still waiting, right? The time I tried to do the last sync was 11:53:13, so I'm waiting on that. And so hopefully the next sync will come through and we'll be okay, but I'm waiting for the next sync and I'll come back. Okay, so took a brief break to let the 10 minutes expire and a little bit more, and then resynchronized the store for business. And what you can see in the log now is it is actually in the middle of synchronizing. So down here, it still shows the last status has failed because the sync is still in progress. It's not finished yet, it's running. But what you'll see if you come over to the software library, that there are a few more things that have shown up now. So the sync is progressing, so we'll let it finish, but at least we know now that it's running, no problem. The only difficulty was that I'd forgotten to create that connection between the web app and the store for business. But anyway, so now that I have this, really easy to go through and deploy apps compared to the way I did it before. So the Feedback Hub app is here. You see that it's in offline mode. You'll see the license type as it comes down. So you'll see as this populates, there are a number of offline and online licensed apps, but right now the only ones that have synchronized in are the offline. Either way, I'll go through and create an application. And easy enough, it's just going to go create the information, collect the information, right? And then I get a chance to choose any kind of details that I want, click next. And then finally, it's going to create the application. Much easier than trying to create it myself, right? And so let that work and finish up. All right, it's done. And so now I can go over to my applications list. And I will see that, in fact, I do have the Feedback Hub app. If I go look at properties on it, I can explore all the details that were created. We see 3 deployment types, which are interesting. So any detail about the application catalog, any references, distribution settings, whatever the case may be, content locations, supersedences. But here's my deployment types, right? And so I can go then learn about these and some of the requirements for them and different things, right? So the content, where it's downloaded, any detection methods that we want, user experience, maximum allowed runtime, whatever. The requirements has to be one of these operating systems, so either Windows 10, ARM, mobile, whatever, one of those. Right? You'll see that load up, right? Is a requirement. And then dependencies and so forth, right? And then you could explore the other ones if you wanted to and see what those look like and so forth. Requirements kind of similar. And anyway, so it creates it for you, makes it really nice that you can deploy it, stores the source files out there. Let's actually go look at the source files and see what those look like, because as we're synchronizing down, one of the things that's taking a little bit of time here, perhaps, is we're having to download the source files, for these. So it's happening kind of piecemeal. So let's go through here and look at PKG source and my store for business here. Created the WSFB folder. Inside that, we have all of these that are coming down. and you can just look at the differences, so on and so on, right? So a really nice approach to being able to deliver these apps compared to doing it yourself. And you see a few, let's see if any more, like one more, I think maybe have come in. Anyway, so you see that they're coming down, right? Okay, so the last thing, one of the last things that I want to show you to kind of have a check mark and know that this is working in your environment. Now, what I didn't do here, and I'm not going to do because it's simple process from here forward, is deploy the app to my Windows 10 machine. It would go into Software Center just like any other app. You could deploy it from there in this case, but just wanted to show you how the sync works, how the connection works, how the deploy of apps works, and so on, and then the deployment actually to the device is really no different than any other deployment of an app, right? So last thing I want to show you in terms of troubleshooting is this. If I go into the registry, then the reg key of interest is highlighted here. Go into the SMS Cloud Connection registry key. This is where the various components of the cloud options that we have will actually be detailed. So you'll see the Microsoft Store for Business, the Windows Store for Business detail that I created is all here. The web app information, all the configuration of it, and so forth. There are other sections that we haven't got configured yet that we will have a detail on, as we add in or as we change things or whatever, right? So anyway, good placeholder to reference in order to validate different information, identifiers, and that kind of thing. Okay, so that part done, let's pull the lab back out of the picture. And one last thing, right? So we've talked about a lot of concepts in here. We've talked about web apps, and we configured those, and we talked about giving rights to the store for business and how that works and so forth, right? So a lot of concepts that just want to help you cement a little bit more in your mind if you're struggling to kind of line them all up. A little slide I call putting it all together, right? And the goal of it is just kind of show how it all works. And that is, we have our site server, and the site server is connected to the cloud. This is actually supposed to be a little bit of a different color so you can see it, but anyway, this line goes all the way over to Active Directory, right? Active Directory is where we create our web app. The web app is where we permission access to the store for business, and because of all of this connection all the way through, that's how it works, that ConfigMgr can synchronize the detail from your store for business all the way through and get it to itself and present it for you, and then you can use it, etc., right? So that's really it, right? Pretty easy, pretty compelling to be able to integrate the store for business and ConfigMgr. We'll wrap it for now, and we will continue this session next time.